Live.
We're live.
Yay!
Hey.
Yay.
Hi, everyone. We're the
Quietly
Union,
live.
and we have real talk about personal growth. And we are definitely having some real talk today. It's the holidays, and it's not always so cheerful and joyful for us. So today we have two amazing guests who's willing to go down the rabbit hole with us. We have, sorry, just laughing at myself. We have Heather McClellan and Pierce Delahunt. And I'll do a little bit of intro for everyone. Hi, everyone. So Heather is an executive coach and EQ consultant based in San Francisco, whose work includes conflict mediation and bespoke organizational health. She works with startups and Fortune 100 clients internationally. Prior to for-profit work, she's trained over 250 facilitators and for 5 years helped grow and run a 2,000 plus member authentic relating community turned nonprofit in Austin, Texas. Pierce holds a Master's of Education from the Institute for Humane Education. Their research was a study of activist education programs throughout the country and continue to study social emotional learning, activism, and social justice. They grew up in the occupied Lenape territory, I butcher it every single time, of New York and New Jersey, and currently live in an echo van, traveling the country and speaking at schools and other venues. They work from the frame that individualist social emotional learning is insufficient. Our capacity to have fulfilling lives and relationships cannot come at the expense of other communities' abilities to do the same. If our peace, love, light, and whole child education movements do not address systemic injustice, then they are none of those things. Union show creator Keith Paolino is a master coach with over 4,000 hours of one-on-one coaching under his belt and has taught over 1,000 students on the subjects of sex, dating, relationships, and intimacy. His main purpose is to help emotionally adolescent adults grow into becoming fully expressed and integrated. My name is Riach, and I'm based in Silicon Valley. I coach startup founders and entrepreneurs increase their relational intelligence so that their investment connections create the success they are looking for. I'm also a filmmaker, and I tell stories that connect us as human beings more deeply. So today we're talking about trauma, the holiday edition. What does that mean, Keith?
The holiday. This time it's personal. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, world. Welcome to the show. Yeah, I was real late to the topic thread this time around, like 2 weeks late, like I think I just shared yesterday. And I was looking at, like, why was that? Like, what happened over the last week or so that had me like totally check out of my responsibility, etc. And then I went through and I read what everybody else was sharing, and I was like, oh yeah, we're in the slip and slide that lasts through Christmas Day, and then it's like the day after is usually like, okay, like the bottom peak happened. But there's so much in anniversaries around trauma, which could be everyday kind of like we're kids and we dropped a toy kind of trauma, or things that were way, way more catastrophic and serious kind of trauma. We experience all different kinds of trauma the same, or very similarly. But the idea is that anniversaries play a big part in trauma, and we get 3 big ones right in a row at this time of year. 4 if you have a birthday around this time. And of course, a lot of people do have birthdays around this time because spring is the time for fucking, so babies get born in the winter following.
It's actually late winter.
Yeah, is it?
Sorry, I had to correct you.
It's all right, people. I don't know what I'm talking about most of the time anyway, so just believe all the other guests and we'll be fine. So yeah, just looking at the spikes in our unconscious behavior, the like increased challenges around this time of year, the increased imposter syndrome that comes from like everybody's looking like they're having a great time with their perfect family, and I'm over here feeling terrible or isolated or or not connected or all those things. So that's the kind of overall topic. It's chronological order of when things go down. Um, so with the overview, we then go around and get a like a 1 minute viewpoint of today's topic, whatever you want to say. Heather, would you like to start us off today?
Sure. The thing that comes up for me around holidays is, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of like time with family, which can mean many things to many people. It could be, oh, thank God, family. And I think to a lot of people, that's not the case. And for me, it also highlights, it's like this checkpoint. There's this consistency to, I visit my mom and my dad, they are divorced, but visiting them and remembering how, oh, last year, what was happening? The year before that, what was happening? And it highlights, usually I'm single over the holidays, and the like, oh, I am not like, I don't have that family situation going on with somebody to like, oh, we're going to visit your parents and you come with me to my family. And so it highlights that, which isn't like the ideal situation in life if I was writing the script. And so those are the things that come up for me. And then in general, I think that slowing down over the holidays can be very hard if people are used to the busyness of day-to-day life as a numbing and distraction tool. In addition to like past traumas, like if this time of year, people actually, there's evidence of people actually like their health will get worse every year at a similar time. And it turns out there was a trauma that happened, and even if they're completely not conscious of it, like there's just stuff that comes up in their physical being. But yeah, and then like more time indoors and it's cold and that impacts people too. There's just so many layers of things. So
Right.
that's just my quick
Yeah. Thank you. Pierce?
Yeah. The holidays themselves, like, so, all right, my mom died on Christmas, her birthday, 6 years ago. So, the time can bring up a lot. It depends on, like how often it depends on how full or empty my life is as I'm approaching that time. But I am fortunate that like my mom and I never really thought much of Christmas itself. So like the Christmas tree or like holiday lights and stuff, like I don't find those things triggering because I don't associate them with that experience, because my mom and I, that was separate from us. But still like that time comes up. But so I've been recovering from that over the years, and the more full and that my life was, the more that I was working on and fulfilled in various ways, then the less triggering it was for me. And then last year was a really awful year, just stuck in 2 different places for 4 months each in like social isolation, one commune in Georgia, one rural New Jersey area, and just feeling really empty, a lot of like waiting and limbo. And then a surprise dumping from my primary partner at the time, after 2 years via text. So that was a really bad one. And coming up on this holiday season, I was wary of those things, and concerned about how they might affect me. But so far, my life has been feeling really full, and in that way, I've been noticing that there have been opportunities or like potential triggers that I know in another part of my life I would have been really affected by. But in that moment, a couple of these events we can go into, I thought to myself, I realized that I wasn't affected, and I looked around me and that everything was fine. And it was a really wonderful redo or rehearsal of those kinds of triggers, and making peace with them in a way, and finding that resolution and closure with each individual one, and that was really helpful. And I'm feeling really good about the upcoming holidays themselves. So.
Thank you. Cindy?
The way you say that, I'm like, what is she? Do you know of something she's about to say? You're like, Cindy, do you want to say it?
Well, I never know. So this is part of our dynamic, which is like sometimes she wants to go next, sometimes she wants to go last.
Okay.
So it's usually this like. I think you're muted though, are you? Yeah, you are.
Might be the microphone.
Oh,
yeah, microphone.
Maybe
okay.
it's loose. Maybe Keith can give his take on this while Cindy
Yeah, totally.
checks her microphone.
This is how the ship goes down in the winter, basically. And just like it's all these little tiny pinprick things that eventually result in me feeling like, why do I even bother getting up in the morning? And I think that's really it for me. Is like I don't have what I would call acute trauma. My family system was more about neglect than acute trauma. So it was a lot of distance, a lot of me reaching for attention and affection, and so then this is that time of year where I do have a lot of resurgence of the feelings like there's a family out there somewhere that is like gonna take care of me. I just was born into the wrong one kind of thing. And if I like, and so I think it's real. It's like all year I'm like, being my best so that around this time of year I can get adopted or something. I don't know. It's not super clear, but it's something along those lines of like, somebody take me home from the shelter, kind of feeling, and then simultaneously with the like rational understanding that that isn't going to happen and I'm actually here, and I don't really have much of a family, mostly through my own choice, and that is the healthiest thing for me, and it's still lonely, and it's still daunting sometimes when I confront that I don't have a like resource backup kind of thing, like whatever resources I have are the only resources I have, and like all those things that come from choosing to step into a life without a lot of support, basically. Like, I mean, I have my support structures of chosen family and friends, but in terms of those kind of traditional support structures or fallbacks or things like that, they don't exist. So it's just this really challenging confrontation between like the fantasy of like, so that I can let myself off the hook of having to continue to choose it and live it and lean in. The fantasy of like something good is going to come along, like Great Expectations. That's what, like, I never really liked the book, but the story I thought was genius. Like, yes, where is my invisible benefactor who's just going to come along and just start, bestowing gifts upon me? And so there's that fantasy that I get hooked into, versus the like remembrance of the reality, and that this is the reality I've chosen. It's actually working out really well, and life keeps getting better and better over time. So that's my stuff around this time of year. Are you back with us, Cindy? I can't tell.
I don't know.
Oh yeah,
the mic was always on, so I don't know what's going on.
I like your festive sweater.
Thanks.
Appropriate.
Yeah. If you're a Scrooge, you would probably really hate being around me, because by July, I will actually actively seek out holiday tunes. I grew up Catholic in a really, really big family, and everyone had lots of trees and lots of presents, and we had to make sure that everyone had the right amount of presents and blah, blah, and like, speaking of Great Expectations, I was thoroughly disappointed every single year growing up. Like, there was always like this sense of like melancholic, like something is better, and like this loneliness and this intense sadness that I'm feeling is not it. So I definitely, in the throes of like I'm excited for like this idea of what the season is supposed to be like versus I feel really overwhelmed and exhausted, and if I don't hold a holiday party, nobody else will. So I have to be the one who, like, it's just like this weird resentment thing that I get because I have such high expectations for feeling a certain way. And yeah, and like this year, like I just feel like I'm doing things super low key, but like even like I would just have to like try to get a Christmas tree in here, even though we have cats. And like you just like things like that where I'm like I have to like somehow control the situation so that one day I will finally have the holiday season I always want. I don't know if that's traumatic, but it feels really traumatic. There's a lot of charge. I'll stop there.
I like that thought around the like what the idea of Christmas and what it's supposed to be. And I remember when I was 18, I was wrapping up high school, I bought a Banana Republic CD of Christmas music. It was all like jazzy and Billie Holiday and stuff. And I started buying, I was like, oh, every year I'm going to buy like a couple of really nice ornaments so that like, because I imagined adult me was going to live a movie life. And movie me hosts holiday cocktail parties where I'm wearing a cute like Christmas like chic dress that's like kind of maybe velvets and like warm material, and I've got a tree and I'm playing this holiday jazz and I've got these beautiful ornaments and like and I'd never been to a cocktail party. I just was like, it's what I see in movies, and I just thought that this is what it means to be a like put together adults in the world, and the holidays are just like this. I was like urban version, like have this like sleek apartment, I think is what I pictured, not the like big fireplace wooden paneled house or something, but that's another one of those like mythologies of what does Christmas look like. Or Hanukkah. I acknowledge that was a like Christian descent. I'm also half Hindu, so my family doesn't do much for Christmas. But anyway.
No, I definitely resonate with the movie star life. I mean, it started with books and escaping in books. Mm-hmm. But man, movies are so much more convenient to escape into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't have
actually an average of 3 times every year.
What's that?
Around this. I watch Love Actually on average of 3 times every single year at this time.
Holidays.
1.5 late year.
I do like that romantic comedy more than a lot of the others out there. So I didn't have the vision of my life as like the movie thing, but I think I do like carry visions and expectations of how I would like my life to be that doesn't always play out. For me, like traveling, like there's the existential romance of that. I love like just the idea of going to new places and meeting new people and reading a book in a cafe on a late night and like snowy and like that kind of thing. But turns out there's not a lot of cities in the United States that have vegan late night cafes.
What?
Hard to find. But yeah, I think one of the things that I really love about the holiday season actually is the pumpkin spice stuff, because I am as basic as as that. But what I find triggering is that a lot of the pumpkin spice stuff doesn't actually use actual pumpkin. They just use the seasoning, which is like, then just offer it year round if you're gonna. But anyway.
Trauma around pumpkin spice. This is our episode.
Yep.
What's all this crap I'm hearing about seasonal goods?
It's just cinnamon and sugar.
I will say I'm as an anti-capitalist, anti-consumerist, everything, toxic monogamy culture and the mainstream Christmas practice and an anti-Christian hegemony and all of that. I love feel-good Christmas holiday songs. So yeah, I'm into it.
So now all I can hear it as is like it's a fetish for you. I mean, basically, like I loathe all these things in real. It's like having a rape fantasy. It's like the actual real thing is horrible, but I still want to get taken every now
Mm.
I won't comment on that.
Well, I was really grateful, or I am as an adult really grateful that my family's not that into Christmas. So like, we had trees and did some presents. When I was younger, I felt self-conscious that my friends got more presents than I did. And I would talk to my best friend on the phone on Christmas Day. She'd be like, what did you get? And I would speak slowly and try and describe the gifts in detail to make it sound like I got more than I did, because she would have such a big list. But as an adult, like my family, we just give presents. Like, it's more like, oh, I thought of you and you would love this. And it's not about occasions. And I'm really glad, because I can't imagine having that whole layer of like, I need to buy gifts for everyone in my life. So yeah.
But I really like what you said earlier, Heather, was also that this time of year is also about like the season, like it gets colder and people are indoors more. Can we all speak to that a little bit more? Because I feel like that's kind of where more of the ouch is more like, for me, like there's like the acceleration of like the outside world, like everyone's ice skating and shopping and doing all the time, and here I'm just like, I just need to like curl up into a ball and like do nothing. Can anyone speak to that?
Yeah, well, like pause, beat, wait.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a winter climate, so I can. But go ahead, Heather, and I'll come after.
Oh, well, I noticed, so even though I grew up in Texas and live in San Francisco now, which is pretty temperate, I'm very, very wimpy about the cold. And winter is a time when I feel less connected to my body because I don't see my body as much. And also so many layers that it's almost like I can't feel my body, because it's like long, like tights for long underwear, and then jeans, and then boots and socks. Well, first socks, then boots, but anyway. But yeah, all these layers, and like I don't get to. It's like getting out of bed. Like in the summer, I can like more just like stretch and just kind of nestle into myself more, versus like try and protect myself from the cold. And yeah, so that's a very different feeling for me. There's something that feels almost muffled in my sense of my body in the winter, and I think that has an impact on me. And being outside being less, just so much less pleasant. And some people love it. I visited a friend in Michigan, and there were people ice skating on a pond, playing like teenagers playing ice hockey outside her house. And I was fascinated. I realized, and I had posted this on Facebook at the time, I was like, oh, I didn't consciously realize this, but I had an implicit, just like emotional level belief that that only happens in Norman Rockwell pictures and in movies. And like, surely nobody really does that, because being out in the snow and ice means instant death, is my like emotional level belief about the world. But anyway, so that's my bit. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up in Rhode Island, and there's between 4 and 7 months of winter every year, and um, there's a section. So the Gulf Stream comes up and comes across Manhattan, like Lower New York and Connecticut and Rhode Island, and that shoe part of Massachusetts, but not really so much Boston. So it's a pretty narrow spot, and it's a lot of wet, cold. So you really do survive winter every year. I mean, it's pretty brutal often. And I noticed that there was a period of time where I was going home for the holidays every year, and like, I'm coming from, at the time I lived in California, and so I was like, oh, I'm coming home for the holidays. Like I'm life is good, whatever. And then I would get there, and everybody was just like drawn down into this, not like, it was like forced happiness. It was a lot of alcohol. My whole mom's side are all alcoholics or dry drunks, and and um, and then like one year, I had this random opportunity, and I went home in the summertime, and like my mom threw an impromptu like backyard picnic barbecue kind of thing, and like people I hadn't seen in 10 years came out of the woodwork for like a summertime barbecue. Like, they were just so happy for it to be sunny out. And so yeah, people talk about like seasonal affective disorder or like the winter blahs and things like that, but I mean, there's definitely a colluded depression that I noticed, at least in my family, my extended family. And it was such a stark difference between going home in the summertime and seeing like completely different people, and also feeling like they have absolutely zero awareness around it. Like it's just like this is how it is. And so yeah, and the cold for me, gray sky versus sunny sky. I was on the phone with our buddy Robbie Carlton the other day, and I was joking about him, living in Boulder. He's like, "Nah, bro, you can't get me on the weather. It's 300 days of sunshine." I'm like, "Oh, all right, I might be able to do snow and sunshine. Like that might be all right." But in where I grew up, it was like, 20 days of sunshine and mostly gray, overcast, low pressure system, like a depression on the body, plus the constant risk of slipping and breaking your head on ice. So so just talking about physical conditions more, Cindy, like absolutely. And then it sets up a muscle memory pattern in my body that no matter where I've lived since then, or where I've been in the winter since then, that the serotonin levels and like all that drop happens. And I've been like getting better and better in terms of like it starts later and later and it ends earlier and earlier, but it seems to be located centrally around the 25th of December. So it's like this cultural, physiological, environmental perfect storm that happens.
As you're saying that, I just imagine like wishing that we were like bears and that our homes are just like these like warm little caves that we could just go and sleep in during the cold months and like not feel like we have to be productive or get things done or meet other people's needs. Like I just feel like, especially in the winter, it's so difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and what you were saying too, Heather, about like you're less connected to your body, I totally feel that. Like I feel like I'm less willing to feel sensations when I'm cold, and so my body freezes up a lot more.
I'm reminded of, I forget the word in Scandinavia, to say Scandinavia broadly, there are probably nuances within it, but there's a type of design or decor, maybe one of you knows the term, but it basically means having very warm, inviting indoor settings. And I'm curious how those cultures like near the Arctic Circle or in it, how they love it, however you say that, how they deal with this, because my sense is in Scandinavia there's a lot of like making really really cozy nests for the cold months and the very very dark months. Also the all the many saunas, and in Finland people with enough means, like middle class people, have saunas in their home. It's like a way to just be like, I am sweltering hot and it's glorious. And it's like how people bond is sitting in the sauna together.
Yeah. We can't talk about Scandinavia because Duncan wants to move.
Oh my.
I'm just like, like I get it. Like the chances of me dying if I have birth over in some Scandinavian country is way less than doing it here. But Pierce is like, yeah.
Lots to say about that. But yeah, I definitely also feel like the social isolation around this time, where not necessarily for every job and business and industry, but for, I think, increasingly more of them, there is still a push to maintain the same levels of productivity around this time, which now just takes so much more energy once it's cold and windy and dark. It's just harder to cross the street and fend your way through a block of people to assert your existence, let alone like try to extract the same levels of profit. So the fact that there's no slowdown during a time when the environmental context demands a slowdown is also exhausting. And then no one has the energy to go outside anymore. And the more that we remove ourselves from natural cycles, where like everywhere we go, there's some artificial light, at least. So like now, like before modern day lighting and all that kind of stuff, like we were way more acclimated to walking around in dark. And that was just part of it. We had a kind of hiber hibernatory practice around slowing down during the winter time, and we aren't honoring that anymore. So I think that is one of the seriously draining things about it too, is that our civilizational context doesn't adapt to the environmental context.
Hearing that, I think of the business world as slowing down over Christmas, but it's from different industries and being an entrepreneur slash solopreneur. But to me, it's the thing that I like about this time of year is it's a time when I can take a longer vacation and not feel as guilty about it, or like I'll be less judged. Summer also, but because I'm like making up my schedule and so I could take more time off in the spring or in the fall, but people don't do that as much. So I think it's like judged more, or even if it's not judged, I'm like losing more business opportunities because other businesses are more active. So I sense a holiday slowdown, but I imagine it's different. Like in the finance industry, it probably just never slows down. And Hurricane Sandy hit in New York, and I was there, and there were traders I knew who worked in the Asia markets in Europe, and they're just like, we got to find internet, we got to find electricity because this is going with or without us. So anyway, so yeah, I'm curious how other people experience that, if business slows down or not. But not this major curiosity. I'm happy to do other topics. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think to me, today's topic is really very holistic. Like it feels like a lot to talk about because it is that perfect storm of so many layers and so many variables kind of coming together around the same time of year, and it's a condensed time period. It's less than 2 months. It's like 7 weeks or something like that total, right? Like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's is all like, it's like, yeah, even less than that. So yeah, I think it is, and so it is all part of that. It is the like wanting to be done, like, worked enough. I'm just noticing it. I'm in the industry that I'm in for the last going on 2 years now, and last Christmas was more difficult for me to notice just because of how the company was. But this year, it's very much like we're in flow, and then like trying to get business closed before the end of the year was just like nobody, like people said they wanted it, or we made offers to people, and they're like, why are you offering this to me now? What the fuck are you talking about? Like people like got cranky. Like I tried to give somebody $80,000, and they like came back with this long elaborate email about how I'm short-sighted, and I'm like, okay, gotcha, yeah, bad, yeah. So yeah, I think you're spot on, and I think it seems to me, because I've been in a lot of different industries over the years, to be pretty universal. And another factor, like just one more place we can see, oh, this shit's happening. I don't understand why it's happening. What are the impacts on me? How do I feel? How do I navigate it? Can I, I've been trying every year for the last 6-7 years to like make it all the way through the winter without hitting a real like unconscious, soggy bottom that is difficult to come back out of. Because there's, like whatever, I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm fine. I'll engage in the down, no problem. But this like 3 to 6 week period, it's like slogging, and I that getting that ignition back, drying back out after the sogginess of it, I'm still really struggle with every year.
Mm-hmm.
So far.
Growth mindset. Yeah. Well, I'm aware that we haven't heard from Cindy if she has stuff like on the last thread or new things. And then it just had me curious about, I like the acknowledgement of like, it's hard. So for anybody watching, like, you're not alone. This is a hard time of year for people. And then that had my mind hearing Keith's last thing go to like, oh, what are some kind of solution mode of like self-care and like what are ways to try and mitigate it? Like, given that we know that's empowering and we can work with it. So at least mitigate what's going on. So bookmarking that and happy to hear other things.
Yeah, I like the acknowledgement of it being hard. I going back to the existential romance of traveling in a van, which like I enjoy and love it. And there's also times where I'm like just trying really hard to find an electrical outlet because it's gonna be too cold that night and I really want heat. And like that's annoying. there's not, and like that is the kind of thing I think that like a movie might show and they turn it into a comedic piece or maybe even glorify the like ruggedness of it or whatever, but like that's not the glorifying part. That's the frustrating part. And like yeah, sometimes growth or journeying just sucks, and that's part of it. I really like that quotation. I'm not positive on how to say her surname, but Cynthia Ocelli, I think, says when you watch a seed sprout, it turns completely inside out and destroys itself. And if you didn't know the process of growth, you would look at that and think it's complete destruction, but it's actually just how growth happens.
I love that. The embodiment of identity change.
Yeah. Doesn't feel good.
Right. Whatever.
Yeah. Quick note, I think your sound is out again. It might be the connection at the
She's
computer.
muted.
Oh no, you're muted. That's why. Okay, cool. I wanted to be able to
come back to us, Cindy.
Yeah. They're doing yard work outside. It's super duper loud. Yeah.
I've been loving the cats in the background of your screen. So Keith, are there ways that I imagine there are things you do that just like mitigate what's going on at this time of year, kind of maybe if it's like more kindness to yourself or like allowing indulgences or like increasing health practices. Yeah,
well, it's going to be interesting too because this is
I love cats. Two cats. Sorry, I just noticed. Okay, carry on.
Apparently I need to get a cat for this holiday season.
I heard it so elaborately, like cats, like when you have cats, it's like how you relate to them is how you relate to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been such a growth edge for me to have cats. I'm just like, you fucking assholes. Oh, great.
Wow. I think I have an unfair advantage in that metric because I just love cats. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I love you. That might not be anyway.
Yeah, but living with them and like realizing they like got on your sheepskin and they had like diarrhea on their butt, like just like stuff like that where like I'm like really OCD-ish. Yeah. Right. And so like I'm just like, I'm going to destroy you, but I can't because you're a baby and you're just like sitting there looking at me innocently like, what the fuck? What do I do?
Yeah, I wonder if it's like cats are how you treat your feminine and dogs are how you treat your masculine. Like that. It's like
Keith, I think you were saying something before I interrupted.
This year I'm trying to just have more curiosity because in July I had the diverticulitis, and since then I've lost 70 pounds, and my diet is very different, and so there aren't, so the emotional eating isn't really an option in, like, it's just not, like, all the things that I would eat, like sugar and carbs, are just not available to me. And like, Cora about once a week is baking this really delicious, like, pumpkin seed flour and date bread that's like, in the realm, but I'm not like, like, it isn't just like a shove it in my mouth kind of thing. Doesn't seem to be yet. So there doesn't appear to be any of those foods available. So I'm just kind of like, okay, how, like, how is it going to show up? Because I don't really know. The last time I was this weight, I was 8, 9 years ago, and I wasn't this self-aware. So I'm just kind of trying to have it be that something is dramatically different. I'm also financially in a better place. I've got this great house that is out farther away from the city, which means it's a quieter, more safe, like, generally, like, my vigilance center is down environment. So there's like so many more things that are environmentally improved, both in this environment and in this environment, that I think I'm taking a more of a wait and see. Like, I'm definitely feeling some down, but I also spent 7 hours changing the rotors and pads in the front brakes of my cars on Sunday, and which meant sitting in a driveway and inhaling brake cleaner fumes. And I'm like, maybe it's not a down. Maybe I just, like, put a bunch of crap in my body and sat really uncomfortably, and whatever, right? Like, and so I'm like, oh, maybe it's not a down. Maybe I'll give it a couple days and see if I feel better. And, right, like, I'm a lot more of a wait and see approach this year. But it took a long time, of a long arc of therapy and ACA, and slowly kind of changing my friendships, and kind of doing all the
Mm-hmm.
mental health things for myself, that then had me in a position where now this environment is true, where I was able to have something scary happen with my body and make a really solid set of decisions and stick with them so far, around it. And so all that was like years worth of prep and cycles and work to get to here. So that's why it feels like it's okay for me to be like, I don't know how this holiday is going to go, honestly. um, I've got a great partner. We've created a lot of intention around our house, and our housemate is part of that. And so yeah, it feels like there's an opportunity for me to be much more of the observer this holiday season than ever before, I would say.
Mm.
But I think generally it has felt like I'm on the drama triangle, um, on the drama
Right.
treadmill.
Right. So I kind of want to have more of like a spin on like what the season means, rather, because it's so easy for me to be like, it's cold and like there's all this activity, and like, and that there's something wrong with me for feeling the way that I do.
Mm,
Just like this past week, I sat my husband down and just told him that I needed to um, set more explicit intention around our relationship, and what does that mean for me, and what are my needs, and are my needs serving the relationship, or is it not serving the relationship? What are his needs around the relationship? Are they serving the relationship, or are they not serving the relationship? And just like I feel like the intensity of like what I feel generally around this time of year, which is just disappointment and shame and depression and all the other stuff. But I also feel like from that place is actually like a lot of self-contemplation and aloneness, and like real just like understanding like, oh, there's some things that have not been working, and this is actually the slowing down time for me to go and like do that, like to to have that clarity and intention, and just be like, oh, this is what I need right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what it means for me to have closeness and belonging with other people. And it doesn't necessarily mean like gathering around a Christmas tree and singing whatever, like it's just it's like beyond that. And for me, I think if I could reframe the trauma that I have around this time of year, it would be that. It's like, oh, like my body is like shutting me down so that I can go and look at this.
mm, mhm.
I feel grateful that you do that you have your attention on it and take steps. And for me, hearing all this and like thinking about, for me, there's a boundaries element to like a challenge or more like advanced level of like, okay, what are my boundaries? What are my basic building blocks of taking care of myself? And then so the self-care of like exercising, even with travel, I downloaded a 7-minute workout app so that I can like do cycles of multiple 7-minute workouts. And like, all right, it's not, it's like, well, I'm away from my gym. So exercising and meditating despite like holiday busy stuff. So to recognize like, no, I need this time. Or if I'm visiting family, like, no, I'm actually gonna go do something else to like self-care and not get like overwhelmed by like being pulled multiple directions. And also taking time off for work that I know that like, it's not Christmas week now, but I am traveling for holidays already. So saying, okay, these hours I'm going to be working, and kind of gaining enrollment from family or like anybody one is traveling with, just like, hey, this is when I'm going to be unavailable. So it's setting expectations and ideally enrolling them and support in that happening. Those things are definitely online for me. And I tend to have this debate between, do I use the slower period to just kind of like luxuriate or like try and take care of myself in different ways? It's kind of like it's another version of being on an airplane, where do I get work done, or do like use the opportunity to get some work done that I might not otherwise put my attention on, or like read this book I'm meaning to read, or do I just like watch the airplane movies? So
that's what I default to.
Yeah, and
I always have such great intentions for my plane flights.
I'm just like, I've never seen Bad Santa. Oh God, what am I doing? Well, I have nothing else to do.
Well, it's one of the movies playing, I guess I'll watch it. Yeah.
Right.
Because sometimes I bring I brought from San Francisco a stack of papers to digitize. So when I'm hanging out with my dad and my stepmom, I can like be using Evernote to like scan them in, and sewing. If I'm talking to family, I can get some mending done. So there's some things I'm like, oh, this is in my backlog that I never get to in my normal life. So just part of me that enjoys that too. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna have these things done by the end of the holidays.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like I've got some time off starting next Tuesday, and it's like, oh, like how do I want to use that time, especially as opposed to just like, well, I don't have to do anything or be anywhere or be accountable to anyone or anything, so let me just become one with my bed. And
I thought that sounds amazing. Just like, I would love to become one with my bed. I have
right, where you can kind of walk into my room and not be able to tell that I'm there because I'm just sunken into it so much, in the blankets and it. So yeah, yeah, I like that. That's been part of my approaching this time of like, oh, what do I want? Like, how do I want to use this time?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how will it feel good to me to use the time? That feels.
But like, to tack onto that is also like being more accepting of the feeling states and like what my body is trying to tell me too. Because I think, like Heather, like maybe similarly to you, like it's so easy for me to be like, yeah, Mom, I'll go to mass with you, and then like go to this person's house and go to that person's house and I'm hosting carols, and then I'm like, oh, it's 3 a.m. I didn't want to do any of that. This is horrible.
Yeah.
I think that
also like just like can in the service of like wanting togetherness, like can I like get people's buy-in, like, hey, like, can we go to bed at 10 p.m. on New Year's Eve? Not because like I don't want to stay up and celebrate, but because I think I would like to wake up on New Year's Day feeling really refreshed and alive and go on a hike, like something like that for me feels good.
I think that ties into the co-opting of self-care as like this luxuriating high expense consumer thing, this like soothing and spa kind of imagery, where like self-care at its root is really just boring stuff, like saying no, and I'm gonna go to sleep now, and having some kind of routine, or like whatever it is we need, even if it's not a routine specifically, but like
Like,
it's
I'm
just
gonna take time
honoring
to
our
clip
needs.
my toenails. I know
Yeah.
of some mom who that was
I
like,
mean, like working out while traveling is like a whole nother level of mastery for me. Like my mind was just like, what? You could do that?
Yeah, Pierce, like semantically, I like taking care of myself better than I like self-care.
Mm,
Self-care feels like spa days and pampering for some reason,
yeah.
and I don't know if that's just like a cultural linguistic meme kind of thing.
That's
Um,
capitalism marketing it.
yeah, right. Like it just.
Yeah,
But if
it's a
I
cultural
say
marketing
taking
thing.
care of myself, to me that triggers my like self-parenting,
Yeah.
right? Like
But
that's
capitalism can't profit off of you going to sleep at 10 every night.
that's right. That's
Oh
right. Like
shit. Keith, ignore my Christmas presents for you. You can send back all those vanilla jasmine candles. I just thought you said self-care. Give them back, give them back.
return to sender. Yeah.
I'll use them. No.
But yeah, I like that semantic difference helps me stay anchored in what I want it to be, and
Mm,
not what the capitalist pigs want it to be.
exactly.
That's right. Oh man, yeah. It's so many layers. Like just talking about it with you guys feels so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to briefly say like what we shared on the thread. I think like maybe with the exception of Pierce, like it just seems like we're going through a lot right now, and it may or may not be tied to the season and the holiday season or whatever. Like Keith, you said earlier, like every single year you just somatically just go through the same pattern in a way. So like I'm just trying to acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff going on for all of
And
us.
I'll say like, and I fully acknowledge that y'all are definitely going through more than I am, as per the thread. But like even the rehearsal or playing out of the trauma and finding resolution, that still like brings up a lot. Where like it can land well, but like there's still some like, okay, now I need like recovery period after that. Where so like when my mom passed, coming up on 6 years ago, my sister and I were very fortunate to be with her, and we were in bed on either side of her, and she had fallen asleep, and she's always been a snorer, my mom, her whole life. And so the way that we found out that she passed was at 2:15 in the morning. My sister says she stopped snoring, and we turn on the light, and she was gone. And then traveling, I was visiting a friend of mine, and it was weird how like all the different coincidences and forces of the universe come together to make this happen, right? I'm visiting a friend of mine who is a college student. Like I haven't slept in a dorm room for a long time, but that's the reason that my friend and I were sleeping on the floor in our friend's college dorm with his roommate in the same room, and his roommate was a snorer. And uh, I like it was bringing up stuff for me to be hearing the snoring, and then out of nowhere he just stopped, and I like it jarred me out of it, and I looked around, and like I had a moment like, oh my god, is he dead? Like, but then I was able to look around and see like, no, everyone is okay. Like I like it was coming up for me, but like I could tell myself like, this is not that.
Hmm.
That is something from the past.
Right.
And that was really just super powerful.
Mm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels on par in terms of like saying like I feel more like the observer this year than ever before. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
and so, yeah, thank you for the like more granular example of what that means, because
Mm-hmm.
that really lands what I was saying even in my body.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I resonate with that observer thing when I talk through that with my therapist, especially the first time. I was getting overwhelmed, and she said, "Can you tell me when you're relaying it to me? Uh, like, are you watching it, or does it feel like it's happening again?" And I was like, "Yeah, it feels like it's happening." And she's like, "Okay, see if you can get some space from it. So you're just observing and watching."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The bearing witness thing is extremely powerful.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this is not that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not that. That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the best things are always so simple.
Well, I want to acknowledge that for like PTSD, like trauma that hasn't been worked on, that it's not, I guess I'm wondering if anybody's watching this being like, man, I tell myself to go in observer mode and I can't do it yet. Like that's very, trauma is very real. The way it shows up in the system, it's as though it's happening all over again. And with work, that space can happen. And depending on like clinical trauma versus the different types of trauma, yeah, the process for gaining that observer capacity and perspective is different for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's a great reminder.
Anything that's been wired can be rewired. It's with time and patience and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm reminded of what one of my therapists once said is about the way that a memory. I just thought that was how life was like if there's a memory that just feels like gripping and intense when I go back to it. She's like, you don't need to live with that. Like, it was in the past, and like yeah, like I just thought that was part of life. Was like, oh yeah, things happen, and then they just like add up. We're just holding all these things. Just like, no, you don't need that. Like, yeah, it can be rewired.
Yeah. Hmm. It feels like this is a really good landing place. Is it okay for you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, I would just acknowledge that some people might be dealing with more family stuff than it sounds like we talked about today. And there was some touching on that of like boundaries and family and like traumas can be pinged, and just acknowledging, yeah, that family is a whole can of worms, bag of cats. I don't know, whatever you might want to call it.
Leave
Yeah.
my cats alone. It would be horrible in a bag.
Of a thing. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And well, it's my hope that the two of you get time one-on-one with Cora on the Union Life group, and maybe you guys can talk a little bit more about the family stuff, because I think that is super important. It is definitely tends to be one of the loudest topics around this time of year, and I think that the four of us are rather fortunate that we have gotten as much um, time on the mat around family stuff as we have, because it wasn't the loudest thing on today's show. And
It's such a beautiful way of saying that, and like, thank you so much, Heather, for acknowledging that. Because I felt it, but I didn't know exactly how to address it.
Well, then we can do our wrap up, which should be popcorn style takeaway thing that you want the audience to remember, final thought kind of thing.
Yeah, I really like just sort of again that just to recap, that reminder of it's hard for probably most people. I don't know about everybody, but there's a lot that can come up this time of year, many layers as to why that's the case. And also I am feeling like grateful for the reminder that came up in conversation around like taking care of oneself and boundaries, and like just the reminder to do that, work on it. It's a maybe an advanced level, like little gym moment of I'm gonna try it despite how easy it is to slip away from it, and just noticing. So for me, there can be like when I'm working on boundary things, instead of getting hard on myself if I slip up, to just notice like, oh, like what did it feel like to ask for what I wanted? How did they respond? How did I feel afterwards? And like, oh, what did it feel like to not ask in that case? And like remembering that, and that's something that I found really useful. And will be continuing to flex in the coming days / couple weeks.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll share as per the family stuff that just reiterating that this is hard, right? And I forget who says this, but someone out there in the world says anyone who thinks they're enlightened, try living with your parents for like a few weeks, see how that goes. And my rabbi, he talks about what he calls spiritual emotional violence we commit against ourselves when we say like, oh man, if I were more advanced in this stuff, like I wouldn't be angry or triggered right now. And like that's a bunch of crap. So like it's hard and we're gonna be triggered, and that is the journey, the work.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's a good reminder.
Mm-hmm.
The piece I want to say about spending time with loved ones. So I think it doesn't actually even matter if you're with your blood family, even if you're with other people and you have some sort of charge around the holiday seasons. What I understand is that the regression that happens for some of us comes from like a really innocent place of like, oh, I have needs right now, and I need to have them expressed in some way. And sometimes it might look like the 3-year-old you trying to get your needs met while everyone is celebrating Christmas. And so the few tips and tricks I have is to if you have resources, to name what it is that you need or want. It might not be possible with your blood family. And if that's the case, make sure you have a few friends on speed dial before you go visit your family, and tell them ahead of time, hey, if I do a text and it's like complete nonsense, it's because I'm texting under the table. I need you to call me right away. So, or something like that. And take walks. Your family's gonna be like, you've never taken walks before. You're gonna take walks this season.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing that I want people to remember this time of year is everything you've learned so far still works. You have all the same tools, and it's a much more challenging environment to bring them into. So for me, it has in the past felt compelling to say, I haven't learned enough how to do this well, or these things don't work, or kind of any of those places where I get defeatist with myself. And I just want to remind everyone that all the tools still work. Everything you've learned, you still have. All the progress you've made, you still have. And you are going into the most layered, most challenging confluence of variables and triggers that you will all year. And it's okay. You can just get through. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to do anything like that. You can just get through, get to the other side, and come back to yourself after, and and that's okay.
Awesome.
Well,
Do you
and
guys
then
have
yeah.
offerings that you would like to share with our audience? Just really briefly, and you can share a link on the video thread so that people can access you, work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'll list my website, HKM Coaching. So in addition to the company and coaching work I do, I think the plan is with Jason Diggs, I'll be co-leading an authentic relating training January, I think it's 25th, 26th, that general weekend time. It's a Saturday, Sunday thing in Oakland in the Bay Area. And it's affordable. It's like something like $300 for a weekend. So it's a great authentic relating intro with some just like solid like distinctions and practices. So that's happening, and I think that's it course wise. But yeah, I'm in the Bay Area. If you have an organization that could use a little like de-risking of the people part or polishing it up, I'm available for that. And same with coaching. I imagine that we're all coaches or in different ways. I don't know about Pierce, but yeah, pick one of us.
That's so funny, de-risking.
Yeah.
I love that word.
Yeah, I like that too. Thank you.
I shared my rabbi's website. I mentioned him. He runs something called Religion Outside the Box. Really fun, creative, spiritual, emotional exercises. And then my own stuff, you can find me on Medium, is where my writing, my original content is. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me by my name, Pierce Delahunt, or my handle is always the same, Pierce. And I will say that my latest piece I'm feeling really good about is it's called Anti-Socialism, and it's about understanding capitalism as the driving force of the individualist ideology that pushes us to retreat from each other and into ourselves. So we're all little individuals rather than communities. We're talking about healing from trauma and all that. That needs to be done in relationship.
Mm-hmm. What was the term again for it? And what?
I think of capitalism as anti-socialism rather than thinking of socialism as anti-capitalism, trying to reverse the frame.
Oh, nice. Oh, I
Yeah.
got that now. Okay, so I think now we can say goodbye to Facebook. Thank you guys so much for being here with us today. I know it's a tricky time of the year, which makes me even more grateful for the time that you're sharing with us.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we're going to say goodbye, Facebook.
We will. Goodbye.
Bye.
It's like, was it the Beverly Hillbillies?